Hello and welcome back to the Sommelier Corner. My name's David with the Keye Team, here to tell you about a fantastic wine. You're probably familiar with it. It is a staple wine out of California that's been around since 1982. But first, let me tell you why I chose this wine, and then we'll dive into it. The home we're pairing with it is what chose the wine. The homeowner is a big lover of horses, and you feel that as soon as you get into the condo. This condo is at Sun Creek in Prospector. Beautiful horse pictures and racing pictures all throughout the home, as well as some nice paintings. And so you really feel the love of horses as soon as you're going through this condo. That being said, I picked a wine that probably most people know, but you might not know the history. So the Kendall-Jackson Cabernet Sauvignon out of California. You may not know that Jess Jackson, who founded Kendall-Jackson Winery back in 1982, also has a love of horses. Before we go in that direction, a little history about Jess. He grew up and worked as an attorney, self-made man out of Berkeley. In 82, he decided to go, he had purchased an orchard about 80 acres, and he decided to turn it into a winery and vineyards. And so he actually, that year, accidentally had a little bit long stuck fermentation on his Chardonnay, and it worked. People loved it. It catapulted Kendall-Jackson onto the map because it was just a style that was super popular and very welcomed at that time. Had a little bit more sugar. Anyhow, so 1982, Kendall-Jackson, Jess Jackson got that founded. He was also making Cabernets. And he sources from some of the best plots to make his Kendall-Jackson. Now that has grown into a massive Jackson family wines portfolio. There's at least a dozen different amazing wineries. We'll stay focused on Kendall-Jackson today. Now, fast forward, 2003, Jess Jackson had loved watching the races back when he was growing up. And he even remembers and talked about watching Seabiscuit back in the day. And so he actually, in 2003, opened his own farm out in Kentucky called Stonestreet Farms and became very much invested in horse racing and the Kentucky Derby, which we just enjoyed this weekend past. So tying it all together, the homeowner of this beautiful Sun Creek condo in Prospector, all about horses, loves the Kentucky Derby, has it all through the condo, and you can feel that love as you walk through. And the maker of this wine, Jess Jackson, creator of this wine, we'll call it, because he's no longer with us. He also loved horses, the Kentucky Derby, and had a big hand in that. So that's how we arrived at this wine. Diving in, I'm going to do some quick tasting notes, but this is a Cabernet Sauvignon. You're probably familiar with it overall, but you may not know that it is the most widely planted grape in the entire world. So a very popular grape. Very resilient, known for tannin structure and also having a decent acidity, so it makes it very ageable. Most well known in the two areas of Bordeaux and Napa Valley Cabernet. So we're going to do a tasting note on this. If you want more information about the history of Kendall-Jackson as well as more information about soils and climate, feel free to read the article. We're just going to focus on the tasting for the last couple of minutes here. So I haven't had a sip of this yet. I just poured this. It's a beautiful color, though. We go through sight first, as usual, with the Quartermaster Sommeliers. So this is a beautiful purple with a nice magenta rim. It's actually a little lighter in color than I would have expected. Most Cabernets are really deep ruby. This one is sourced from a lot of different vineyards, so it doesn't have that purple core. There is no evidence of gas or sediment on this. And the tearing is light. There is some tearing that exists, but is not over the top on this particular wine. On the nose, there's no evidence of false, no evidence that this wine has turned or corked in any way. The aromatic intensity is probably a medium. It doesn't really punch out of the glass. You got to dig for it a little bit. And the age assessment on this is youthful. That being said, it is a 2023 vintage. That is being lauded right now as one of the vintages of the decade across the board in Napa Valley. So something to keep in mind, not necessarily with this wine, but any great Napa Valley Cabernets you usually like to buy or order, make sure to keep in mind that the 2023s are definitely going to be a nice high-end quality there because of the vintage. So on the fruit, this one, Definitely dominated by black fruit. I get blackberry, black cherry. I also get some red cherry and some currant in there. Honestly, I smell root beer. And so the fruit condition is very much a ripe fruit condition. This one is not explicitly in, say, Napa Valley. It is sourced from multiple areas. So just something to keep in mind with that as well. But nice ripe fruit condition on this one, not baked or jammy, which you can get sometimes in some of the hotter areas of California, like Napa Valley and Oakville, but also Paso Robles comes to mind as a more baked or stewed fruit profile because of how hot it can get down there. Non-fruit characters. I did mention root beer. I'm getting a little bit of like a tomato leaf and bell pepper, which is interesting. Not super indicative. Maybe it's actually more like a green peppercorn even that's showing through for me. And there is evidence of oak on this. I'm getting some vanilla, allspice, even a little bit of licorice on the end there as well. Going onto the palate, first sip here. Quite delicious. Little lighter, nice and tannic, immediately puckers the gums. Remember, tannin structure is felt on the gums. Acid is felt under the tongue with salivatory. This does have a little bit of acid too, but I think the main pucker factor here is the tannin. They're not super coarse, and they're fading already, but they definitely, that first sip really was a nice little shock to the gums and it kind of puckered it up. So, with that said, the acidity I'd put at a medium, we'll just go with a medium. The body is going to be a medium plus. The tannin, I'm going to put at a medium plus. They're not super high, but it is overall a softer Cabernet. Texture, I'd say this is a creamy wine. And then also, if we're talking about the alcohol, I'd say medium plus. It's got a little bit more alcohol, as Cabernets are wont to do quite often. The palate on the fruit, I would confirm that it is a ripe fruit profile, still not stewed or jammy, and definitely not underripe at all. No baked fruit, just nice, fresh, ripe fruit. Lots of blackberry and black cherry, some red cherry as well. Maybe even a little bit of sour cherry going on there. And I get some currant and some of that allspice on the back end, confirming that oak, and a little bit of vanilla as well. Not really many earthy components on this wine, but it is a nice, delicious, fruit-forward Cabernet that is going to be very nice and food-friendly as well. So, length of the finish, I put it around a medium. It's not an overly complex wine, so that's a medium as well. It is balanced, though I will say that the alcohol might be a little bit out of sync because the alcohol is a little higher than this lean body wine. Climate, we know this is a warm to hot climate. They're sourcing it from various areas, so it's probably, consensually a warm climate. Plus, with the way that it works on the coast of California, the fog rolls in, cools the grapes overnight and into the morning, and then the sun comes in and bakes them for the rest of the day and ripens them up. So that's part of why, you have this nice fresh fruit profile on this. So, with all that said, I'm going to leave you to it. I hope you enjoy this wine. There's more information in the article if you haven't already read that. Have a great day, cheers, and happy Kentucky Derby.